Oh, Rubicon's been fantastic. I think that, while we're in classes with the guys most of the time during the week, one of the things we're able to do here is we're actually able to interact with them. And well, once you get to meet somebody in person, talk with them in person, the communication bandwidth increases. So this has been great. The people that I've met that are also trading, that I'm also in the Rebel Pit with, and we are exchanging text messages back and forth, the camaraderie is just excellent. So I recommend anytime they have an in-person event, you got to come and attend.
Join us this December in Miami, Florida for Market Rebellion Live.
Mark Lopresti sitting in for Pete because Pete is in the dentist chair as we speak.
Oh!
So it wouldn't be a fun time for him. And I know you've had some issues with doctors recently too, Mark. So I'm the lucky one, I guess.
Yeah, I'm definitely happier to be standing in for Pete in this appointment rather than the one that he's doing right now. And we're going to leave my recent medical issues for a different segment.
Yeah, we definitely will.
But recovering and good to be back talking to the fantastic Market Rebellion audience, Rebel Nation, as I love to call them. Good to see you all again. Happy Monday.
Thank you. Happy Monday to everybody. We're going to start it off with the 1 minute macro, which I thought, Mark, it was appropriate to start with basically the fact that crude oil's falling apart, whether it's measured in Brent or WTI West Texas Intermediate. You've been down doing a lot of energy work down in Texas, West Texas in particular, but we've got OPEC considering increasing outputs, even though they cut output by 2 million barrels just a month ago. Now they're talking about dialing back in 500,000 barrels.
Yeah. It's a significant potential increase in production talk around the December 4 OPEC meeting that's coming up in just a few short weeks. You got to question the motives. And there's a lot of speculation as to the motives. The most obvious and the one that's the party line from OPEC leaders is, look, we're going into winter months, higher production, anticipated increased demand. We're going to produce more oil. Well, does that really make sense against a 2 million barrel production cut that you were talking about prior to the midterms, which was seen by many as a slap in the face to Biden? John, what do you think's going on here? What's in OPEC's head?
I do think that, this is a little bit of politics, and it is only giving back a quarter of what they took away.
Yes.
500,000 barrels, if that's what it is per day, versus a 2 million barrel cut.
Right.
It does sound like a lot more like it's political, and it's just them talking about who's got the bigger bat.
Yes.
Say, Mark.
Yes. And look, John, the numbers don't even match up based on their own statistics. They're anticipating that demand this winter is going to increase by 1.6, almost 1.7 million barrels per day to a grand total of 101.3 million barrels per day by mid Q1. So the 500,000 barrels they're talking about doesn't quite cut it. And as you point out, still 1.5 million deficit negative to the downside. One other thing to note, folks, for the conspiracy theorists out there, Biden did recently give MBS a little bit of a pass in pending legislation, civil legislation, that was planned here in the United States regarding the murder, the horrible murder of journalist Khashoggi in that embassy in Istanbul. So very interesting timing, and a lot of pundits looking at whether that played a role in this decision. But that's the 1 minute macro.
Yep, that is. And I agree with you. I think it has everything to do with MBS.
Yeah.
And he is, of course, the guy with the biggest bat in the room whenever OPEC meets. And like Mark said, it's a couple-day meeting coming up in just a couple weeks. All right, let's talk about Disney, Mark, because Bob Chapek, his tenure ended. By the way he left, you could pretty much determine that they gave him the opportunity to step out, and he chose not to, so they had to fire him. The shares are down, 29% since he took over the company versus the market that's up 27% over the same period. This is, approximately 3 years now that he's been at the helm.
Yeah.
Was it too much? Is that why we saw that big pop to 100 from a 91 close, and then we've gradually sold off from there? Was the pop too much, Mark?
I don't think the pop was too much. I think it was a little bit of exuberance. Investors clearly clapping, right? Not just a golf clap, but a full-on football clap to portend our sports moment coming up in a few minutes. That Chapek was shown the door. It was like, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. He did a terrible job by the estimates of most analysts at the helm of the company. Yes, navigating the company through the COVID recovery, getting the parks reopened, perhaps making a lot of missteps or questionable decisions in conjunction with Disney Plus and its efforts for streaming. But man, they brought Mickey Mantle out of retirement and put Bob back at the helm. Investors are happy about it. We'll see how it plays out, but I think it's only good things for the House of Mouse with this change at the helm, with Iger back with a firm hand on the tiller. I'm feeling more bullish on this stock than I was a week or so ago. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, me too. And I think one of the things that Iger needs to get across is that subscriber counts may go up for the streaming service, Disney Plus, but they do have to figure out the pricing because obviously they're not making money. So, like we've said many times, Mark, the pilot that comes on and said, I've got good news and bad news. Good news, we're making great time. The bad news is we're lost.
Right.
So, they've got to figure this one out. I think Iger is more trusted by Wall Street. And that's why, as we both said, we've seen the pop out of the stock. All right. What about Grindr? GRND. And no, I'm not just saying it, folks, because it's an LGBTQ stock. I'm not trying to make any fun, but I am pointing out that because they just were part of a SPAC, they had a massive explosion to the upside. And then after that, yeah, you're going to give back some ground because we all know SPACs basically price at 10 and then they either go up, like, for instance, the ex-president's SPAC, Mr. Trump with Truth Social, or they go down. And in this case, it popped big, and then it's giving back some ground today, Mark. What do you think of GRND as a stock?
Yeah, well, listen, so SPACs much maligned in recent months. Seems like it's been a lot of recent months, and in some instances for good reason. A lot of the companies that fueled the SPAC explosion that we saw previously were companies that were pre-revenue, that had unproven business models, that were really a wing and a prayer. And when that happens and you have too much of that going on, you have a bubble form, and bubbles, as we know, burst. So the question on everybody's mind is, where do we stand now in SPAC land? Are SPACs dead? No, SPACs are not dead. SPACs are evolving. SPACs are transforming. You've started to see SPAC issuers, SPAC sponsors, that is focusing more and more on companies with proven business models, with revenue, with something called EBITDA, which a lot of the early SPAC targets couldn't spell, much less point to in a business plan. This one could be good. I mean, Grindr certainly has, they dominate the niche in terms of being the Tinder for the LGBTQ community. They've done a good job at maintaining that moat. And I think it's very, very difficult, and I tell people this all the time when trying to understand either anticipated SPAC performance or the performance of a SPAC right after the de-SPAC, as it's called, when the merger closes. You can't judge a lot from the performance of the stock in the first few days or even the first few weeks. So we'll wait and see. This could be a good one. We're watching some other recent ones like Fly Exclusive and one or two other SPACs that came out in the past couple of weeks that have been performing fairly well. Decent companies, good companies, have a shot still at using SPACs as an effective vehicle to go public.
Yep, I agree. And I imagine that, that Q nightclub terror that went on this weekend in Colorado Springs, that's not the reason this one's down today. This is just because it was up 500% on a 2 of the last 3 days. That's how much it moved. So you're going to give back some. And of course, our hearts and prayers go out to all the folks that were part of that tragedy. And we salute the heroes that took down this crazy person that came into that gay nightclub in Colorado Springs. So as bad as that story is, there were a couple people brave enough to step up and not just let bad things happen. All right, Mark, how about DraftKings? We've got that stock down double digits today, apparently because a hacker got in there. We've heard about Sam Bankman-Fried and hacks that may have happened, or maybe it was a backdoor over at FTX. But as far as DraftKings, if somebody did hack and get in there, that is not something that any of these betting sites need, because obviously people need to know that their money's safe there, much as they need to know their money's safe at a crypto broker.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt about it. And I think this is going to be a bump in the road, really, for DraftKings and for the other online betting companies. That market share and that marketplace continues to grow, continues to evolve in various different ways. We could do a segment on that, and take up a half an hour easily, just talking about where there is still significant room for growth in those kinds of stocks. What it really highlights to me, John, is it's less a story about the online betting companies, and it's more a story about cyber, right? We talk a lot about the kind of companies that do well and should perform well, regardless of inflationary environment, regardless of a recession, regardless of interest rates and a hawkish Fed and all of the wonderful stuff that we've been dealing with in the markets since midsummer. Cyber is one of them. Cyber threats are not going away. They're becoming more and more sophisticated. They're using more and more quantum computing, and we're going to be talking a lot about that in the coming weeks and months as both a cyber threat and a cyber solution and what that means. So this is a cyber story. This is a blip for DraftKings. I still like the stock. How about you? John?
I do too. So at this level, I would be a buyer of it, but I will point out that it's one of the stocks that we're going to talk about for our unusual activity segment. So I'll hold off on that till then, Mark. What about Carvana? These guys, they were a darling during the, in particular during the pandemic, when people weren't really going out of their houses much. Certainly a car vending machine, catches your eye, but it's more than that. They deliver cars, they pick up used cars that people want to trade in and so forth. But one of the things they have to do is they have to be able to make money. And this one is just burning cash, and it's trading to the downside yet again. It's in the single digits now, Mark. Mm-hmm. Would you take a shot on this one, or do you think this is just, they've got to do a little trust building again to show you that they can turn this battleship around?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one, John. Is it a used car company? Is it a tech company? Is it a machine? Like, what is it, right? I mean, and if you wonder why they're burning money, if you've ever looked at one of those car vending machines, they're freaking expensive. Here's what I like about Carvana. They took a technology and a service and software as a service type of approach to a business that really sucks. If you ever bought, or more importantly, sold a used car, we still do it like we did when we were selling used buggies. You'd put a sign on it and said, "For sale, please call this phone number." Yes, you can list on eBay. Yes, you can list on classifieds, but it is a terrible experience. So they brought a really unique business model to solve a problem that was unsolved. So I like that. I think the car vending machines was much more of a very expensive marketing gimmick than a real path to profitability. So I have questions about that one. They do have good market share. They really do dominate in terms of like Car Gurus or some of their competition, both public and private. So I like their competitive positioning. I might look at the stock. I think it's got a little bit more to fall, But if it does in a meaningful way, I might look to start to buy, but I think it's still got room to the downside from where we are right now.
Yep, I agree. I think it's got more room to the downside until they prove that their net losses, that they can actually stop the bleeding there. Until they do that, people aren't going to give them a lot of credit. So I'm right there too. I guess we've both got two hands up, as in don't buy, rather a hold at best. All right, my unusual activity.
One thing we got to mention on that one, I'm sorry to interrupt you, the macro environment doesn't help. Interest rates up, right? Costs more to finance a car. That's bad. So you got macro headwinds that are not helping Carvana. I apologize for the interruption, but I thought that was an important one to add.
No problem. I agree. That makes things more difficult for home sellers as well as car sellers, whether you're doing it independent or whether you're doing it through professional. I agree. All right, let's go to DraftKings again, because I said that I had a little bit more information about that, and I'm going to share it right now. This Friday expiring puts were purchased aggressively today. So Carvana had that whoosh lower, almost hit a new 52-week low. It's still down double digits right now. And also DraftKings, DKNG, also trading to the downside today pretty hard. In the case of DraftKings, the Nov 25th expiring 14 puts. That's the 1-4 puts, with the stock trading at 1460. So that's somebody betting that this issue with DraftKings isn't quite over yet, or they bet that perhaps it'll take longer to fix it than just an overnight fix. So they bought a put that is under the market, and that's a sign of bearish intent going forward, folks. So as far as my trade, I am in DKNG DraftKings puts right now. How about you, Mark? What do you got for unusual activity?
Well, we've got actually to the bull side, John. We've seen unusual in KO and Coca-Cola. Investors buying over 11,000. Also, of the Friday expiration, November 62 calls were about between 16 cents and 35 cents above open interest. The stock trading around 61.78, 61.81 to be precise, looking at the quote right now. We're seeing this activity ahead of the ex-dividend date for Coke of November 30th. Remember, Coca-Cola paying a quarterly dividend of 44 cents a share, implying an annual dividend yield of 2.87%. So we shall see, but we're definitely looking at some bullish call buying activity in Coca-Cola.
Yeah. And I imagine this is a pretty good time of year, Mark, for Coke, both family get-togethers, as well as, as the college football and pro football seasons start shaping up towards playoffs, a lot of parties. And that probably means a lot of Coke being purchased as well. I like the trade. Both of these are very short-term, though. Mark's and my trade are both this Friday expiring 25th of November expiries. All right. What about a little sports bite, Mark? FIFA, the World Cup's going on overseas. We all like that, even if we're not huge soccer fans. It's those games I think are the most fun to watch. I love watching Premier League, and I do that regularly, but I really like watching World Cup, men and women's World Cup. And in this case, though, they had a glitch with their software for their phones so that the tickets were disappearing off of their phones. Now, England did go ahead and rout Iran. I think they won 6-2 today over in Qatar. But wow, what do you think, Mark, of the fact that you have a World Cup, which is a huge event, and a online ticket that just disappears off your phone?
I think there's probably two people in the unemployment line this morning. One is the former CEO of Disney, and the other is whoever the guy was responsible for this app for FIFA. What a complete and total cluster, you know what? My God. one of the biggest sporting events of the year. Kudos to England, although that was not a huge surprise. Apologies for any of the Iran fans, but incredibly strong World Cup team, certainly showing for FIFA this year for England, expected to. In my humble opinion, even though my daughter is a Barca fan, so if she hears me say this, she's not going to be too pleased, but I think England is going to continue to do extremely well in this matchup. So, hey, listen, I feel bad for anybody whose ticket disappeared and couldn't get into the game, but that, again, a blip. World Cup soccer, man, that and Formula One, among the biggest, most watched and most, unbelievable fandom in sports globally. So lots to see.
Yep. All right. And, I'm not even going to bug you, Mark, with the Jets, because that was just a horrific performance yesterday, except by their defense, I guess. Their defense just had sack after sack after sack, both teams, New England and the Jets. But it wasn't till the final seconds, and all of a sudden some punt returns screws the whole thing for all the Jets fans. But let's talk about Kansas City, because I know you were watching that one.
Yes.
A lot of us were glued to that game because two premier young quarterbacks playing against each other, West Coast matchup, Kansas City, and once again, Mahomes pulls a win out of the, what could have been a loss with most other quarterbacks helming the team.
Yeah, it was definitely the game to be watching yesterday. We were actually trying to watch the Dallas game, but there wasn't much of a game to watch by the fourth quarter because there was just absolutely no chance whatsoever. Nobody was covering the spread. So ESPN, I think we might have been watching it on network here in New Jersey, just went to the Kansas City game, which obviously was much more interesting. But yeah, look, Patrick Mahomes continuing to deliver 20 out of 34 passes, 329 total yards. Absolutely unbelievable. The kid's unstoppable, John.
Yep, he truly is. And it used to be years ago, Mark, that I thought Russell Wilson was in that category, obviously Brady. And now there's nobody I would less like the ball in his hands in the final seconds of the game if I'm the defending team than Patrick Mahomes, because he is just magic between his feet and his vision downfield. Yes. I think he's obviously just a special guy, and he might have cemented the MVP yesterday with that performance because marching them with a minute and 46 left, marching them down the field, and of course hitting Travis Kelce. What can you say? Those two are just one of the best combinations in sports.
It is his downfield vision.
All right.
There,
well, Mark, we'll wind it.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, Mahomes always seems to find the crease, right? He's got like a fucking GPS. He somehow manages to find the way to the end zone, right? It's like it's a remarkable skill, but it is that downfield vision that you're talking about that's part of what makes him such a skilled athlete.
Yep, truly, he does have that. All right. And we're going to throw out a 1-minute venture, Mark, because you and I, for those of you who don't know, Mark and I do a lot of venture evangelism. That's a term that Mark has coined. And we've actually got I think a trademark pending on that, Mark, venture evangelism. But one of the firms that we're working with now is Ideanomics, which has 4 different verticals in the EV space. They're an incredible team, and they have one of the craziest people in investing. He's brilliant, and he's just done a fabulous job. That's Shane McMahon, the son of Vince McMahon, is one of the largest shareholders in Ideanomics, IDEX.
Shane's also on the board, if I remember correctly. Yeah, we're very excited about adding Ideanomics to the Moneta Advisory Partners portfolio. Moneta Advisors is, of course, the company that John and I engage in this venture evangelism, where we get involved with companies, public and private, that we think can benefit from our expertise, from the exposure that we can offer them through platforms like this. Quick disclaimer, we are oftentimes invest in these companies. We are oftentimes paid by these companies in the form of stock, sometimes in cash for the services that we provide. It's important that we make that disclosure. So we do with IDEX, we do have a position in IDX. We are long IDEX stock, so this is not unbiased discussion, nor is it investment advice, but we do think that this is a very interesting, diversified EV company that, as John points out, has verticals in charging solutions, fleet vehicles, electric motorcycles, Energica, John, which, as you know, was featured last week. Full episode on Jay Leno's Garage. Quick aside there, best wishes to Jay for a continued recovery. Jay, of course, suffering from some very bad burns from a fire he was in, a car-related fire that he was in last week. We hope that Jay has a complete and total recovery from that terrible accident. But that aside, IDEX, Ideanomics, doing some very, very interesting things in the electric vehicle space. You'll be hearing more about that company from us and others in the near future.
Well, again, thank you very much for joining us, Mark. All of you that are joining us, thank you. We're still growing by better than 1,000 new subscribers to our YouTube channel every week. Just go to YouTube, type in Market Rebellion, and you'll see all of the videos, some with Mark, some with Pete. And hopefully Pete's having a full recovery today as well after going in and sitting in that dentist chair. That's one of those things, Mark, that I just hate. But, you know, it's something that we all have to do. And sometimes it's really painful. So we hope Pete feels better quickly. And I really appreciate you coming on and joining us today, Mark.
It was my absolute pleasure. It's always great to address the Rebel Nation, John. Thanks for having me on.